Imagine this: you're standing in line at a coffee shop, watching a stranger place their order. Before they even finish their first sentence, you've already formed an impression. Something about the way they hesitate before saying, "I think I'll have." Or how they rush through their words as if apologizing for taking up space. You don't consciously analyze it, but your brain has already decided: confident or insecure, genuine or performing, at ease or at war with themselves. Now reverse the lens. What if every single day, with every word that leaves your mouth, you are broadcasting a hidden autobiography that you never agreed to write? Now, think about this for a moment. Think about the words you choose when you are calm. Imagine the tone you use when you are angry, insecure, excited, or trying to impress. Have you ever asked yourself why you speak the way you do, or what your manner of speaking silently reveals about who you are? What if your everyday language exposes your deepest fears, your hidden strengths, your unresolved wounds, and even your unconscious beliefs about yourself and the world? And what if by becoming aware of how you speak, you could reshape not only your communication but your confidence, your relationships, and your entire self-image? In this video, we will explore something rarely discussed but immensely powerful: how your patterns of speech reveal your inner world. We will draw from psychology, philosophy, neuroscience, and linguistics to uncover why you speak the way you do, what it says about your personality, and how subtle shifts in language can transform how you experience life. Stay with me until the end, because the final revelation is the most important and the most transformative of all. If you enjoy deep reflections on human behavior, consciousness, and personal growth, take a moment now to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this video with someone who loves exploring the hidden layers of the mind. Let me know in the comments if you have ever noticed patterns in the way you or others speak. What you are about to hear may permanently change how you listen to yourself and to others. The way you speak is not merely a habit. It is the result of years of conditioning. From early childhood, your brain learned that certain words were safe and others were dangerous. What if the way you speak, the pauses you take, the words you avoid, the tone that shifts when you're challenged, is not merely a communication style but an involuntary confession? A real-time transcript of every wound you've tried to hide, every fear you've refused to name, every belief about yourself that was planted so deep you mistake it for truth. You think you're just talking. But you're not. You're revealing. Here's the unsettling part: you don't even hear it. The patterns are invisible to you precisely because they are you. Like a fish that cannot see the water it swims in, you cannot perceive the linguistic cage you've built around your own identity. That slight uptick in your voice when you state an opinion, turning certainty into a question: when did that start? That compulsive "sorry" before asking for what you need, who taught you that your presence required an apology? That habit of filling every silence with noise, as if quiet itself were a threat, what are you running from? But here's where it gets truly disturbing: these patterns didn't begin with you. They were written into you. Every authority figure who interrupted you, every peer who mocked your vulnerability, every moment you expressed something true and were met with indifference or punishment, your nervous system remembered. And it adapted. Your language became a defense mechanism, a survival strategy encoded so deeply that you now execute it automatically, thousands of times a day, without conscious awareness. You are speaking in a language you never chose, following rules you never agreed to, revealing a story you never meant to tell. Consider this paradox: the very tool you use to express your identity is simultaneously the tool that conceals it. You speak to communicate, yet your manner of speaking often communicates the opposite of what you intend. You say, "I'm fine," with a voice that trembles. You claim confidence while your words seek permission. You assert boundaries while your tone apologizes for having them. The medium has become the message, and the message is written in a code you cannot crack because you are trapped inside it. And here's the question that changes everything: if your speech patterns were formed by experiences you didn't choose, in environments you couldn't control, reflecting beliefs you never consciously adopted, then who is actually speaking when you open your mouth? Is it you? Or is it a composite of every voice that ever had power over you, now ventriloquizing through your vocal cords? What if authentic expression isn't something you need to find, but something you need to excavate from beneath layers of learned performance. What if the voice you think is yours is actually an echo chamber of inherited fears, societal conditioning, and unconscious adaptations to past pain? And what if, most radically, the path to knowing yourself begins not with looking inward, but with listening to how you speak outward? The way you talk is not incidental. It is not neutral. It is a living map of your inner territory, drawn in real time, updated constantly, revealing precisely what you can see about yourself and, more importantly, what you cannot. The question is no longer whether your speech reveals who you are. The question is, are you ready to hear what it's been saying all along? Because once you start listening, truly listening, you cannot unhear it. And everything changes. The reason you cannot hear your own speech patterns is not a flaw in your awareness, it is a feature of your survival architecture. Your brain, shaped by millions of years of evolution and decades of personal conditioning, operates on a fundamental principle: efficiency through automation. What you repeat becomes invisible. What becomes invisible becomes you. Carl Jung understood this deeply when he wrote about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we cannot see because we have relegated them to the unconscious. Your speech patterns live in this shadow. They formed during moments when your developing mind learned a crucial lesson: certain ways of speaking kept you safe, loved, or accepted, while others brought danger, rejection, or shame. A child who was punished for speaking too loudly learns to whisper their needs. A teenager mocked for vulnerability learns to coat every sincere statement in sarcasm. An adult repeatedly interrupted learns to rush their words, cramming thoughts into shrinking windows of attention. These adaptations were intelligent responses to real threats. The problem is that the threats often disappeared, but the adaptations remained, fossilized into your identity, calcified into, just the way I am. Friedrich Nietzsche warned of this trap when he spoke of becoming. He observed that humans mistake their current state for their final form, confusing temporary adaptations with permanent essence. Your speech patterns feel like you because they have been you for so long. But they are not you. They are historical you, a museum of past selves, speaking in voices that once protected you but now imprison you. Consider the deeper mechanism at work here. From the moment you first learned language, you were not simply learning words, you were learning what was sayable and what was unspeakable. Family systems, cultural norms, religious doctrines, and social hierarchies all encoded themselves into your vocabulary. Certain emotions had words, others had only silence. Certain desires could be named, others had to be buried. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein captured this perfectly: the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. Your world was shaped not by what you were taught to say, but by what you were taught not to say. This is where the hidden problem reveals its full dimension. You are not simply repeating learned phrases, you are inhabiting learned limitations. Every "I can't," every "I'm not the kind of person who," every "people like me don't," is not a description of reality but a boundary inherited from someone else's fear, projected onto your possibility. Arthur Schopenhauer argued that suffering arises from the will, the blind, driving force beneath conscious thought. But what if your linguistic patterns are manifestations of a will that is not even yours? What if you are suffering under the tyranny of internalized voices, parents, teachers, bullies, society, all speaking through you, limiting you, defining you, without your conscious consent? The psychologist Alfred Adler spent his career studying feelings of inferiority and how humans compensate for them. He discovered that much of human behavior is driven by attempts to overcome these feelings, but the strategies often backfire. A person who feels intellectually inadequate may over-explain everything, flooding conversations with unnecessary detail. Someone who feels emotionally vulnerable may adopt aggressive speech, mistaking harshness for strength. The compensation becomes the cage. Here lies the hidden problem in its starkest form: you believe you are choosing your words, but your words were chosen for you long ago. You believe you are expressing yourself, but you are expressing a self that was constructed by forces you never examined. And because this process is unconscious, because it operates in the shadow, you defend these patterns as if they were you. To question them feels like self-betrayal. To change them feels like death. But what if it's the opposite? What if clinging to these patterns is the real betrayal, a betrayal of who you could become? What if the death you fear is not the death of your true self, but the death of a false self you were never meant to carry? The weight of this realization is suffocating. You have been speaking someone else's language your entire life, mistaking it for your own voice. The tragedy is not that you speak in inherited patterns, the tragedy is what those patterns quietly cost you. Every day, in ways you cannot measure, your language is shaping your reality, narrowing your possibilities, and determining how others perceive and respond to you. This is not metaphorical. This is neurological, psychological, and devastatingly real. Neuroscience reveals a principle that should terrify and liberate you in equal measure: neurons that fire together, wire together. Every time you repeat a phrase, "I'm not good at this, I always mess things up, that's just how I am," you are not merely describing yourself. You are sculpting yourself. The brain does not distinguish between description and prescription. Repeated language becomes reinforced neural pathways, and reinforced pathways become automatic thoughts, and automatic thoughts become your perceived reality. You are speaking yourself into existence, one phrase at a time. The question is, whose existence are you speaking into being? Consider the social consequences. Research in communication psychology demonstrates that humans form impressions within seconds, and language is the primary signal. When you speak with hesitation, peppering sentences with "maybe," "I think," "kind of," you are not being polite. You are training others to doubt you. When you apologize before making requests, "sorry to bother you," but, you are not being considerate. You are teaching people that your needs are intrusions. When you laugh nervously after stating something serious, you are not easing tension. You are undermining your own message. The world does not respond to your intentions. It responds to your signals. And your speech is broadcasting signals you never consciously chose to send. The cognitive bias known as confirmation bias amplifies this effect catastrophically. Once people form an impression of you based on how you speak, they filter all subsequent interactions through that lens. If your language signals uncertainty, your competence will be questioned even when you demonstrate it. If your tone conveys anxiety, your ideas will be dismissed even when they are brilliant. You become trapped in a feedback loop where your speech patterns create perceptions that reinforce those very patterns. But the deepest consequence is internal. Your relationship with yourself is mediated entirely through self-talk, the constant inner narration that interprets your experiences. If that voice is harsh, you will experience life harshly. If it is fearful, you will perceive threats everywhere. If it is limited, your world will shrink to match. Viktor Frankl, who survived Nazi concentration camps, discovered that the last human freedom, the one that cannot be taken away, is the freedom to choose one's attitude in any circumstance. But that freedom is expressed through language. The way you speak to yourself about your circumstances determines whether you experience them as permanent prisons or temporary challenges. Identity-based language, "I am a failure," calcifies suffering into essence. Event-based language, "I failed this time," preserves possibility. Most people never realize they are doing this. They speak habitually, reactively, automatically, and then wonder why their lives feel stuck, why relationships feel strained, why confidence feels impossible. They work on goals, habits, strategies, never realizing that beneath all of it, their language is quietly sabotaging everything. Cultural conditioning makes this worse. Society rewards certain speech patterns and punishes others, often along lines of gender, class, race, and power. You learn not only how to speak, but how people like you are supposed to speak. These invisible rules operate constantly, constraining expression, demanding performance, punishing authenticity. The unseen consequence is this: you are living inside a linguistic prison, and the bars are made of words you repeat without questioning. Every day you spend speaking unconsciously is a day you remain trapped. Every moment you fail to hear yourself is a moment you cannot change. But awareness, even painful awareness, is the first crack in the wall. The path to freedom begins not with speaking differently, but with hearing yourself clearly for the first time. This is the rebellion, refusing to remain unconscious. Refusing to let inherited voices speak through you unchallenged. Refusing to accept that the way you've always spoken is the way you must always speak. The first radical act is listening, not to others, but to yourself. For one full day, become a witness to your own language. Notice when you soften statements that should be firm. Notice when you rush words as if your time doesn't matter. Notice when you hide behind humor instead of saying what's true. Notice when you seek permission for things that require no permission. Do not judge. Do not fix. Simply observe. Awareness is not the beginning of change, awareness is change. The moment a pattern becomes visible, it loses its absolute power over you. Psychologist Carl Jung spent his life studying what he called congruence, the alignment between inner experience and outer expression. He discovered that authenticity is not about saying everything you think, but about speaking in ways that genuinely reflect what you feel and believe. Most people violate this constantly, not from malice but from conditioning. They say, "I'm fine," when they're suffering. They say, "It doesn't matter," when it does. They say, "Whatever you want," when they have strong preferences. This incongruence creates internal fractures that accumulate into identity confusion and emotional exhaustion. The rebellion demands congruence. It demands that you close the gap between what you feel and what you say, not recklessly, but truthfully. This doesn't mean verbal aggression or emotional dumping. It means precision. It means speaking with accuracy rather than performance. Consider the shift from, "I can't handle this," to, "This is difficult, but I'm learning how to respond." The external situation hasn't changed, but the internal experience transforms completely. One statement collapses agency, the other preserves it. Psychologist Ellis proved that emotional suffering often stems not from events themselves but from the language used to interpret them. When you speak in absolutes, always, never, impossible, you create emotional rigidity. When you soften into accuracy, you create space for movement. Here's another act of rebellion: reclaim responsibility without blame. Notice the difference between, "You made me angry," and "I felt angry in response to what happened." The first places power outside yourself. The second restores it. This is not about denying that others affect you, it's about refusing to surrender your emotional autonomy to circumstances. Language that describes inner experience rather than assigns external blame transforms conflict from warfare into dialogue. Pay careful attention to identity-based language. When you fail at something, do you say, "I failed," or "I am a failure"? One describes an event. The other defines an essence. Friedrich Nietzsche warned that language can imprison us when we accept it unconsciously. Identity statements, "I'm not a math person, I'm bad at relationships, people like me don't succeed," are not observations. They are sentences you are serving. The rebellion means questioning the verdict. The most counterintuitive insight: you don't need to force confidence into your speech. Forced confidence sounds hollow and defensive. True confidence emerges naturally when your words match your inner state, when you stop performing and start expressing. As you develop self-awareness, as you process old wounds, as you challenge inherited beliefs, your language changes automatically. It softens where it was rigid. It strengthens where it was weak. It becomes yours. This is not self-improvement. This is self-reclamation. You are not learning to speak. You are remembering how. Here is the truth that changes everything, the revelation that most people never grasp fully enough to let it transform them. The deepest shift does not come from changing what you say occasionally. It comes from changing your relationship with your own voice entirely. You have spent your life believing that your voice is a tool, something you use to communicate, to persuade, to defend, to connect. But this is backwards. Your voice is not a tool you possess. It is the ground upon which your sense of self is built. Every word you speak is not merely transmitted outward, it echoes inward, shaping your identity with each repetition. You are not just speaking to the world. You are speaking yourself into existence. This is why superficial affirmations fail. This is why motivation fades. This is why you can know intellectually that you should speak differently yet find yourself trapped in the same patterns. Because the voice inside your head, the one narrating your experience, interpreting your reality, judging your worth, is using the same wounded, inherited, unconscious patterns as the voice that speaks aloud. You cannot think yourself free using the same language that imprisoned you. Jean-Paul Sartre understood this when he wrote about authenticity and bad faith. Bad faith, he argued, is living according to roles and scripts imposed by others while pretending you chose them freely. Most people spend their entire lives in bad faith, speaking lines written by parents, society, trauma, and fear, never realizing they have the power to rewrite the script. But here's the catch: you cannot rewrite what you cannot see. And you cannot see what you have never questioned. The ultimate truth is this: your voice, the authentic one buried beneath conditioning, has been trying to speak through you all along. Every moment of discomfort when you said what you didn't mean, every flush of shame when you diminished yourself, every surge of frustration when you stayed silent, those were not weaknesses. Those were signals. Your true self, protesting the performance. Viktor Frankl discovered in the concentration camps that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies freedom. But what he didn't explicitly say, though he lived it, is that language is both the space and the bridge. When you change the words available to you, when you expand your linguistic repertoire beyond the narrow vocabulary of fear and limitation, you literally expand that space. You create room to breathe, to choose, to become. This is not about speaking perfectly. It's about speaking truthfully. Not truth as moral righteousness, but truth as alignment, when your words match your experience, when your tone matches your feeling, when your expression matches your essence. This alignment is what authenticity actually means. And it is the most radical act of rebellion available to you. Consider what happens when you begin to speak authentically. At first, it feels terrifying. Your nervous system screams warnings: they'll reject you. You'll be too much. You'll lose control. These fears are ancient. They remember every time honesty was punished, every time vulnerability was weaponized, every time your true voice was silenced. But here's what those fears don't understand: you are no longer the powerless child who needed to adapt to survive. You are an adult with agency, choice, and the capacity to build a life that honors your truth rather than fears it. When you reclaim your voice, people respond differently. Not everyone will celebrate it. Some will be threatened by your evolution because it highlights their own stagnation. But the right people, the people aligned with your authentic self, will recognize you. They will feel the shift. Presence is magnetic when it's genuine. Confidence is compelling when it's not performed. Authority emerges naturally when you stop seeking permission to exist. But the deepest transformation happens internally. When you speak to yourself with the same compassion, precision, and respect you deserve, something fundamental shifts. The harsh inner critic begins to soften. The fearful voice begins to quiet. The limited beliefs begin to crack. Not because you've defeated them, but because you've stopped feeding them with your words. Philosopher Martin Heidegger argued that language is the house in which being dwells. This means you don't simply use language, you live inside it. For most of your life, you've been living in a house built by others, with walls that constrain you and windows that show only what you were taught to see. The ultimate rebellion is not renovating that house. It's burning it down and building a new one, word by word, sentence by sentence, truth by truth. This is not a one-time event. It is a practice. A daily, moment-by-moment choice to hear yourself, question yourself, and speak yourself more clearly. Some days you will succeed. Some days you will revert to old patterns. This is not failure, it is the natural rhythm of transformation. What matters is that you keep listening. What matters is that you keep choosing. The final revelation is both simple and shattering: you are not discovering who you are through language. You are creating who you are through language. Every word is a brushstroke. Every sentence is a choice. Every conversation is an opportunity to become more aligned with the person you are capable of being. Your voice has been waiting your entire life to be freed. Not found. Freed. It was never lost. It was only buried beneath layers of adaptation, performance, and fear. And now that you know this, now that you've seen it, you cannot unknow it. Listen closely to how you speak. Not to judge it. Not to fix it forcibly. But to recognize it, refine it, and let it carry you forward into a version of yourself that is more honest, more whole, more alive. The way you speak shapes the world you inhabit. Choose your words like you're building a home. Because you are.